Welcome back. Praise the Lord, everyone. This is Elder Adrian Heyman. Now I was looking at the events of this past weekend, notably the arrest of the Venezuelan President Maduro, and I couldn't help but think of what parallels, if any, were those of the recently pardoned Honduran president or ex-president, and what case, if any, were to be made. As saints of God, I'm trying to tie this into there. As saints of God, we're to obey the laws of the land. As long as those laws do not violate the laws of our God that He's given to us, the laws of Christ. Loving one another, giving, living a saved and holy life, not wishing or not putting what we do on others, but allowing them to freely choose. So I don't know, these are the things that we hold dear as Christians, even more than what we hold the laws to. However, we are supposed to follow the laws of the land. And if not, then there are consequences for our actions. Our lives as Christians has to be seen 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 52 weeks a year, for as long as we live. They can't be suspended because of the laws of the land, or the laws of this world, for that matter. So why am I going through all this? It's because I want you to be sure of what's going on and to not make decisions or actions or even opinions based upon what others say, but it must be based upon facts. So therefore, back to Maduro and back to the Honduran president or ex-president. And I was reading, I wanted to make sure I understood the background of the arrest of the Honduran president. First of all, the Honduran president was arrested in 2022 by the Biden administration. He was extradited to the U.S. and held in prison. What was the charge? Involved with or laundering over $450 million based on the drug trade. So in essence, he and his cronies had made themselves rich at the expense of others. And regarding the death of those in the United States who suffered drug overdoses based upon this particular person. So he was arrested in 2022 by the Biden administration. However, there is a difference between that particular president's arrest and the arrest of the Venezuelan president. For instance, the Honduran president who was arrested wasn't the president when he was arrested. He had finished his terms. He was pretty much a private citizen. He was essentially subject to the laws thereof. And you may ask, well, how come the citizens of his country did not arrest him? That's a good point. Possibly that they couldn't find a case against him. Because remember, they tried this Honduran president and found him guilty. So therefore, he was serving time in prison, which would mean that essentially they found quite a bit of evidence during his sojourn, so to speak, in the United States, at least in the courts of the United States. So he was not the president at the time. They couldn't find charges, so they carried him, so the Americans captured him, brought him over there, tried him in their courts, and found him guilty. Now, one may say, isn't that, well, why is it so different than Maduro? I'll get to that. Maduro was arrested, or apprehended, or whatever you may want to call it, while he was serving as president, which means there was a huge power vacuum that was created. And we don't know for sure what's going to happen after that. If you studied American history, then the thing about it is not in the Bible, but it seems to be very clear. Those that do not learn from history are doomed to repeat it. I remember the United States, at least reading in history, that they didn't like the elections in Iran. So they brought up, or they propped up, the Shah, who essentially did away with whatever elections were there and ran the country according to how the U.S. wanted it, regardless of whether it hurt the people or not. And that's what I want the U.S. to avoid here in Venezuela. And whoever they choose as president is not just a puppet of the United States, that the people are going to they're going to remember, and they're going to have simmering hatred for. Because in Iran, they finally revolted against the Shah. It was a popular revolt. And in its place, of course, he was fomenting it as well, was the Ayatollah Khomeini, who I believe had just come back from exile. And because of the hatred of the Shah and the Americans who propped him there, that was why they had the hostage crisis in the American embassy. Of course, you know the story. The Ayatollah took over, subjected Iran to a draconian government that not only hated the United States, but also put forth various laws that severely restricted the rights of the people there, especially women. And to be honest, now they're starting to have another revolution against the restrictive laws of the Ayatollahs. Now, it's going to be interesting to see how that turns out and how that's going to also work into prophecy. Because after all, Iran and Russia are very close friends in terms of relations between the two countries. But getting back to Maduro and the Honduran president, the reason why I say Honduran president because I'm not sure of his name. Some of you may probably already know. But again, the Venezuelan president was arrested while in office. As bad as he may have been, as crooked as the elections may have been, and I do not believe the elections were valid. I think there was a lot of corruption there. Happens in many countries that don't have an established electoral system. And of course, that could easily happen in any country if we don't take care of our voting system or of our way that we elect people. But again, Maduro was arrested for essentially drug trafficking, which of course, if it ends up in the United States, it results in the deaths of many, many, many people, which is why they were, at least repeatedly, bombing the speedboats and killing everyone that was there. That's another issue. I'll deal with that later on. But regarding Maduro and his stay, so to speak, in the United States to be awaiting trial, the Honduran president, during all this, or at least right before all this, was released because he was pardoned. He was pardoned by President Trump, who authorized the seizure of Maduro. Because he also says that now the U.S. can go into the oil fields and pump oil from there, as though that's our oil. But again, that's another story. I'm really dealing with Maduro and the Honduran president. Now, the Honduran president was freed. Maduro is locked up. There was no power vacuum when the Honduran ex-president, because he wasn't president at the time, was seized. And the political life of Honduras went on with minimal interruption. Whereas we have very clear uncertainty regarding what happens in Venezuela. Will the vice president step up and take it? Will she pursue Maduro's policies? Even as essentially that would be a big risk, because the president can come, the United States can come and arrest her too, or whether she abides by the United States. And to be honest, there'll be many, many people there that used to not like Maduro and his cronies, but may turn against the United States because it's still their citizen. It's still a Venezuelan citizen. You're still interrupting in Venezuelan politics. You're still exerting control over that, much as what Russia had wanted to happen to Ukraine. In fact, before Zelensky, the Ukrainian president had strong leanings towards Moscow. So even though they were a sovereign country, they were pretty much almost like a Russian satellite state. So, what's taking place with the Honduran president? Today, or if it wasn't yesterday, then definitely today, the current Honduran president has issued an arrest warrant for the pardoned Honduran ex-president, according to international law. So what's taking place is the one person that was pardoned, who was involved in all types of drug deals, possibly with the cartels. Is that fake? I think that's what Trump is saying. It's fake. But the allegations are out there. The proof was out there. And to add to that, his own president, current president, has now issued an arrest warrant for him. If the United States doesn't want to arrest him, the Honduran government will, if they can get to him. If they can get to him. International law will arrest if they can get to him. Of course, it'd be a pretty big if, unless you do a covert operation in the United States. And then, of course, comes the question, why are you doing that? Why are you doing that? I mean, how could you dare do such an action in the United States? Because we do it all the time. We do it all the time. Remember with Barack Obama? And even though Osama bin Laden was hated by most people in America, they still went over sovereign land to get the guy. Because you thought he was safe. You would think he was safe. They didn't think that the army of the United States could reach all the way over into Pakistan and pluck him out and kill him. Now that we know we can do that, we actually could definitely apprehend a president of Venezuela. But this is the question that you must ask yourself. Is this what we want to do? Because what we're doing is dealing with regime change. And we had told ourselves after our experience in Iraq and even Iran, why are we doing this? Why are we essentially putting ourselves in danger just to get some materials that they're important for our country, but we've been making do without it for quite some time? Why would we do that again? That's why I made the note earlier. Those that do not learn from history are doomed to repeat it. And last thing, if our president right now can do this with impunity, and remember, if it was something that the Venezuelans liked, and here's the other thing too. The one person who got the Nobel Peace Prize, who essentially was fighting Maduro all this time, you would have thought this person would be a natural to be put up into the leader of that particular country. Not the case. Not the case. I believe they would rather work with the vice president under Maduro and get her to do whatever the United States wants than to risk having a revolutionary against the leftist policies, the militant leftist policies of Maduro, because they can get more out of that particular person who's the vice president right now, other than the one who led a resistance against the Maduro government. So all these things we have to think about. Are we setting ourselves up for future allegations as well as payback for what we've done? Well, Venezuela is a small country, but it has a lot of people. Not as much as we do, not even close. But anyone, any state, can always spread their fervor, anti-American fervor, to other states. And we already have enough of that. Do we really need any more? Especially since the Honduran president, or ex-president, is not in the same boat as Maduro. 3 differences. The Honduran president was an ex-president when he was arrested, number 1. Number 2, he had charges, actual charges brought up against him, and he was convicted. Same thing that possibly Maduro will experience, charges. But the last one is telling. The current Honduran president sends an arrest warrant for the ex-president. Is anyone in Venezuela doing that for Maduro? Different situations. Judge them differently. Fairly, but differently. God bless you. May He keep you. Take care, everyone. And God bless you, Elder Wardlow. You've been such a support to me. I thank you so much. Take care of yourselves. In Jesus' name.